Welcome to the Period Besties podcast with Stasha and Katie. Think about it as chatting with your best friends about all the TMI stuff you've never talked about before with two period coaches who've been helping hormones collectively for over 20 years now. I'm Stasha.
And I'm Katie, and we're pulling back the curtain on what it's like in the world of menstrual coaching. From puberty to menopause and everything in between, we're here to show you how period coaching can save the day. We'll share practical tips and information you can put to immediate use to improve your hormones and happiness.
We're removing the mystery, ending the taboo, and shining a light on just how powerful period coaching can be.
So whether you need period coaching or are considering becoming a period coach yourself, these episodes are going to help you. We'll share stories, coach live on air, and bring smart, savvy guests to share their wisdom too. Let's start today's episode.
Welcome to Period Besties podcast. Today, Katie and I are going to walk you through your luteal phase in flow. So how do you use your luteal phase practically for business, work, even home? Running a household is really basically the same thing as running a business, right? We have a shared Google Doc for groceries and whatnot. So
Same.
Use these things practically. And we're starting with the luteal phase because in my system, which I have in my new book, Bloody Brilliant Business, we talk about what, why, how, do. And what phase is your luteal phase. And it's going to click immediately when I explain it. What's going wrong? You know very clearly in your luteal phase what's not working. So when you're in your luteal phase, you want to assess the problem. So that's why we start all of the stuff for the most part in the new book, Bloody Brilliant Business, with the luteal phase, because really at the end of the day, what's working, what's not working is the best place to start. So that's why we're starting these podcast episodes in this order, and then we'll go through the whole cycle. So we're not going to split luteal and deep luteal into two, but I do want you to know at the outset, if you are a person who has a deeper luteal phase that's problematic, like myself with endometriosis, high brain fog, fatigue, maybe pain, cramps, those kinds of things, let yourself off the hook those days. Don't stress about it. Maybe jot some things down in a journal, but don't try to fix things. Don't try to get in there and do anything. Like, just take care of yourself. Self-care, nourish, eat well, rest. And if you're using this system, the idea is that you don't have to do anything on those days. You really can set yourself up so you can have those days off, or you can do an hour here or there. Like, I love editing the podcast episodes because it doesn't really take brain power. I'm just going, oh, delete me saying, delete Katie saying like, delete the guest saying, you know. So it's very easy to do that when my brain is dead. So that's what I do in my deep luteal phase, is I just edit these episodes so that we sound like strong, confident women.
Yes.
And let the rest go.
Thank you for your work. I love the idea of what is going wrong, because we all know that different times of the month, different times of our cycle, no matter what is happening, it still feels wrong, right? It still feels like I should be more successful. I should be on vacation. I feel like every time I'm in luteal, right? I look at Instagram and I'm like, why am I not in Greece right now? All the things of like, why not, and what is actually going on. And I love that we're talking about this, because I think this is when we, especially as business owners, we decide we want to burn it all down.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
Yeah. After the January blues, that first quarter, my luteal phase, every year, I'm like, you know what? I should just go get a job. What am I even doing anymore?
Oh my God, that was me last year. I don't know what was going on, but I was like, I should send my resume out. I don't have a resume. I need to update a resume. I need to do all this. And then I kind of got out of that funk, especially the January funk, especially the luteal funk. And I was like, No, I just need to recreate some systems that are no longer working for me now that my kids are getting older. Right. So instead of, you know, deciding everything is over and done and you have to start from scratch, I like the idea of just writing it down. And I do that a lot in my business. I do that a lot with my family and like things that we are trying to do. I'll tell my husband, yeah, write that down. We'll talk about it in a week. Do not bring me anything new to try or to implement right now. Write it down. And I'm like, we'll talk about it later. So now I need to talk about it, but I keep pushing things off, like family things. And I'm like, okay, now we have to like sit down and where are the kids going to kindergarten? What are we doing? Versus now that I'm not in luteal anymore. Cause I had a very long cycle last time and I kept pushing everything. I was like, wait till my period comes.
Yeah, but it really is an effective way of doing it. And I do encourage people as well to look at what is working in this phase.
Mhm.
Right. So it's a bit of that practice of gratitude. They've done studies on gratitude. And if you sit down and you do your gratitudes every day, you do start to rewire your brain to be more positive. And so this is part of that process where if you write down what's not working, this system that worked for us when the kids were little babies isn't working now that they're in their first year of school. So we need to reassess the system. So that's what's not working. Well, what is still working? Because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't want to throw out what's working either. So rather than starting from scratch, you're using the lessons that you've learned and you're using the things that are working to build a better, more appropriate system. In the book, I call it the problem client principle, where it's okay, you have a client who's maybe not showing up or showing up late or they're being problematic in some way. And this is that phase of the cycle where you go, okay, well, what is the problem? What's actually the problem here? Is it that they're not showing up? Is it they're showing up late? Is it that you're letting them get away with it?
Mm.
Is it that you're letting them no show and you're saying, okay, well, no problem, just reschedule at your convenience? Or are you saying, well, showed you lost that one. See you next in 2 weeks. Is it not in your contract? Did you not have something in your contract for the situation? So, looking through there and going, well, no, I do have something in my contract. Okay, great. So that is working. It's there. Are you enforcing it? Yes, no.
Yeah, it's so true because you're right. We need to also look at what is working. And something that I talk to my clients about a lot is when we're making lots of shifts to what they're eating and their movement and sleep, everything usually feels good. And then they get to the luteal phase and they're like, oh my God, nothing's working. Nothing's working. And I'm like, okay, let's check in. We just talked a week ago and all of these positive things you were feeling. And just reminding yourself, even if it's hard to find, that's why I like to write in a gratitude journal because I can go back and just be like, okay, that felt really good. And I'm going to hold on to that, even if I'm not feeling like that today, because we're human. We don't feel the same way every day. And giving ourselves that break that we need. I think we're just so hard on ourselves sometimes, myself included. So giving myself that acknowledgement that you're just in the luteal phase. So it's easier for my brain to be like, this is not working. This is not working. But I like the reminder. So thank you of this is also working. This also feels really good. This also might not feel good today because my husband's breathing is bothering me. But give me a few days and the corner will turn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an interesting process. It's certainly one of the reasons coaches have coaches even, right?
Mhm.
You listening, if you find yourself in a spot, you might be time to hire a coach because they're the person who's going to say, okay, well, in our last session, you did say this was working. So let's talk it through. Is it actually working or are you just in your luteal phase currently? Right. So having a coach that you can talk things through and can help you recalibrate to reality can be helpful. But also realizing and acknowledging that the luteal phase has an estrogen dip in it. And most of us have a high estrogen, like too high estrogen in the luteal phase. 90% of women have PMS, and that's almost always excess estrogen related. So it's often the highest time we have estrogen in our cycle, but it's also the time we have the lowest estrogen in our cycle. And estrogen, when it's balanced, makes us feel good. But when it's too low, estrogen has a calming effect. It helps us keep from murdering the people around us in these years, which are often our children. So it's got a point and a reason to being, and the reason that it makes you pacified so that you can raise children without murdering them, honestly, really. But also it lets you tolerate a lot of other BS in the world. So when you get into that luteal phase and you go into that estrogen dip, you stop tolerating things that you wouldn't tolerate without estrogen. So that's a bit. And then oftentimes it spikes too high, and then it makes us moody and cranky and murderous and all of that stuff. So it really is a tricky phase to navigate because estrogen can do really crazy things, and it affects our moods and our tolerance level. So if you find yourself being intolerant of something, rather than going, oh gosh, what's wrong with me? Ask yourself, is that just the estrogen dipping and showing me something that I shouldn't be tolerating? Like maybe I should not be tolerating this XYZ, like this problem client or this issue in work or in business or my boss or my husband or whatever. Like maybe I should be working to mend the situation somehow, improve it, fix it. And throughout this series of podcast episodes, we're going to talk about just how to do that. But step one in that luteal phase, what's not working? And for those of you who are running a business, this is a great time to do those visual things because your visual skills are higher in this phase. So it is a great time to do graphics, work on the website design, maybe edit things to have some bold, some caps, some italics, do the Instagram design posts and batch them for the month to come, work on the website pictures, maybe pull some good background photos or those kinds of things. So really leaning into the visuals, which is why I said I like to do the podcast editing, because it's just sitting and watching our podcasts and making the edits. So those visual things are really your strength in this phase. So while it might sound like luteal is just a wash, it's actually really solid because it helps you problem solve, spot the problems and the issues that are happening so you don't have to repeat them month after month after month.
Mhm.
And really good, strong visual skills time. So doing all of those visual projects in your business, perfect time to do it.
Yeah, I love the clarity it brings because when I'm in other phases, I'm more thinking big picture, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Where I'm like, I have all these ideas. And then when I get into luteal, I'm like, okay, like, how do I actually bring clarity? How do I actually think about executing this? What actually makes sense? So I really acknowledge that time in terms of thinking things through because I feel like sometimes I have a great idea and then I'm like, I'm not sure how I actually want to present this or how I want to actually do this. And that gives me time to get clarity on things, even clarity on, is this a yes or a no? I feel like when I'm in luteal, I know when I don't want to do something. Where I'm in ovulation, I'm like, yes to everything. And then I'm in luteal. Oh God, this doesn't feel good. I socially with friends, with family, or with my business, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do this again if I can't get out of what I've already committed. But I think that really helps me make better plans in the future when I have that feeling. I feel like my whole body is like a hell yes or a hell no.
It's very prioritizing.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah, it really helps you drop the junk or the shiny object syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, oh, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. When in reality, you probably just need this one thing or start with just this one thing, but it really helps you prioritize what's most important for sure. It's good that way. We just give this poor phase such a bad rap.
And rest is important when you are running a business. Rest is important when you are working for somebody else. Rest helps you move forward with motivation and more ideas. So, this phase, even though you might feel less social, more introverted, and you don't want to do as much, whether it comes to work or socially, when you actually lean into it as well, it's a good thing. It's not a negative thing. It's a good thing to be able to nourish and reflect and move on. I think a lot of times I look back at when I worked in corporate, I think I could have had a different outcome, even in just meetings or brainstorming, executing, if I had leaned into, I'm just not feeling it today. You don't really have a good idea today. Let me linger on this a little bit longer versus just sharing something that's not necessarily exciting.
Or that's coming up. So you save a couple great ideas from the ovulation phase, you hoard them, and then you spit it out in your luteal phase when you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
If you have enough lead time.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of businesses and companies give you quarters and half years and all, and kind of big projects as well. So you can always, keep something on those back.
Yeah, that's why I love having just like a Google Doc, and I just love to put just random things on there that I'm like, that will make sense at some point. Yeah.
Exactly.
If it doesn't make sense today.
Well, of course, in Bloody Brilliant Business, I dive into each of these phases as along with the tasks that most of us do running our own businesses. So we break it down by phase. And of course, the luteal phase is in there. And I do in the book break things down into luteal and deep luteal when it's appropriate as well. So if you're, again, like me, somebody who has a very struggle bus, deeper luteal phase, we've got options and answers for you as well. So I hope that everyone will jump over and grab a copy of the book and listen to the future episodes. We're going to dive into the menstrual phase next week. That'll be really interesting because that's another one that it gets a bad rap. And we think that what you're going to say is just don't do anything. And you know what? That might be the answer if you're someone like me. But if you're 90% of people, your menstrual phase can actually be one of your most important phases in business. It can be really such a powerful phase for running your own business, at work, all those different things. And even with, again, running your family, your household, those kinds of things. So tune in next week for the menstrual phase. It's going to be fantastic. Any parting words of wisdom you'd like to share?
I'm just excited to talk about the next phase because I actually have noticed, especially in the past 6 months, my body really liking this phase more than it had previously. So I'm excited to chat about that.
Yeah, me too. I have a lot on the menstrual phase since having endometriosis and having to work with it and figure it out. I've got a lot of gold for the menstrual phase. So tune in next week. We can't wait to chat with you. And until then, bye for now.
A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bressack Wellness.
Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bressack, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebressack.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.